Hey guys, Luke on Sean's channel. Today I'm really excited to be bringing you my new and improved Virtual World deck. Virtual World is one of my favorite decks of all time. I have a lot of fun because of how diverse you can take this strategy. You can use it in many different ways. If you want to make a rank 6 and 3 toolbox engine, that's fine. If you want to go crazy with Synchro 9s, 6s and 12s, it's just really good deck that you can take in a wide variety of different ways. And since the ban list took away two of our major players, I decided to change strategies a little bit. So without further ado, this is Virtual World. Starting things off strong, we run 3 copies of Lulu. Now with all the Virtual World monsters, or at least most of them anyways, they all have like pretty similar effects in the sense that you use them in your hand to target a Virtual World card on the field. Then you can send a Virtual World card of a different kind, i.e. a monster, spell, or trap that you didn't target, to the graveyard, and then you do another effect after you dump that card, special summon the monster, and then you do a final effect. So Lulu is definitely the strongest in this case because Lulu, you target with one virtual card on the field, you dump another card of a different kind, and then you get to add a virtual card of the third kind from your deck to your hand. So that of course is just a really good way to get deeper and deeper into the deck. Your range of options are so wide using Lulu, so it's definitely important to run her at 3 copies in the deck. Absolutely essential card for the strategy. So 3 copies of her, very important. 3 copies of Jiji of course is very good too. Jiji is probably the weaker of the level 3 virtual world monsters, but still very good and serves a purpose because Jiji, same effect, targets and one of another kind, but Jiji has the third part of the effect being that during the end phase of the turn you can add a virtual world card, virtual world monster from your graveyard to your hand. So of course Jiji is very good for most of you to get another body onto the field. The end phase effect of adding a monster from your graveyard to your hand is of course very good for recovery for going into another turn. But if you want to cut this down to 2, that's absolutely fine. I just find with the strategy I'm going with now, definitely running 3 of it is just a little bit too good. So 3 copies of Jiji, very important. I run 2 copies of Nyannyan. Nyannyan doesn't have the typical virtual world monster effect where you can target a card from hand in order to special summon it, but Nyannyan still has some very good recycling and revival effects that are definitely very important and having him worth to be running at 2 copies in a deck. If Nyannyan's in the graveyard and a level 3 monster is normal special summoned to your field, then you can special summon it as a tuner but banish it when it leaves the field, which of course is very good. But not only that, Nyannyan also has another effect where if this card is banished, you can target one of your other banished cards and shuffle it into the deck, which of course can be really good recycling if one of your very important cards gets banished off of, say, you're going against a runic deck or whatever. Nyannyan can be very good at recycling it back, which can come up in some circumstances, but we also have Chuche, which is very good for that effect. So Nyannyan can only come up with the rare circumstance that one of your non-virtual world cards is banished, but definitely the first effect where he's able to bring himself out as a tuner is definitely way more important. So definitely run 2 copies of Nyannyan in this build. Going on to the higher levels, we have 3 copies of Lili. Lili of course is very good. You basically get to dump 2 cards off of Lili because Lili has the effect, typical virtual world monster effect, you target a virtual world card in the field, you dump one of another kind, special summon her, and then you get to dump a card of the third kind. So if you're targeting a trap on the field, target it, dump a spell, special Lili, and then you can dump a monster. So you're basically just filling up your graveyard off Lili and you get a level 6 body onto the field very easily. That's why it's very important to run her at 3 copies in the build. 2 copies of Laolao, my personal favorite virtual world monster, but he's just not as integral to the strategy that you need to be running 3 copies. 2 copies is more than enough. Laolao has a typical virtual world effect where you target a card, dump another, and then what you can do after Laolao is special summon to the field is that you can actually target a virtual world monster that's already in your graveyard and you can special summon it, which is absolutely great because Laolao is a level 6 tuner, so you can bring back a Lili which might be in the graveyard and then easily go for a Synchro 12 or even a rank 6, which can be very powerful. So Laolao of course is very important to run at 2 copies in this build. I quite like running the 1 copy of Toutou. I think that's how you pronounce it. I always get confused. But I think Toutou can like serve a purpose in this build. It's not the typical virtual world effect that you can easily summon it. It's a lot more like Nyannyan in this case. But Toutou can still be easy enough to bring out because if you control no monsters or all your monsters you control are psychic and slash or worm monsters, you can actually normal summon this card without tributing, which can be very good because this of course is a level 6. It also has the effect that can revive itself from the graveyard, which may not be as powerful as Nyannyan's, but but still it is pretty good because Toutou, if it's in the graveyard, you can discard one psychic or worm monster and you can special summon this card as a tuner but banish it when it leaves the field, which of course is just really good. The only thing that makes it a little bit bad is the fact that we have to discard a specific monster type in order to get her to come out, but in some circumstances it can be very good, and I oftentimes actually use this as my normal summon, so I think that's a way she serves a very good purpose in this build. So one copy of Toutou I think is more than enough in the build. Just some hand traps now. 3 copies of Ash Blossom, very important, very good hand trap, and 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. You guys don't need me to explain these cards, they're just very good hand traps. We run 3 copies of Virtual World City Kauwloon. Kauwloon is very good because we use it for the sole purpose of easily getting Chuche out onto the field. Kauwloon has a few other effects, but I guarantee you they will almost never come up unless Virtual World gets some like really good Virtual World Gate cards in the future if we get like a little bit better support. So I don't really see a purpose of going into them. You're almost never going to use them. All you need to know is that Kauwloon, when you activate it, you can just activate Virtual World Chuche face up in your spell and trap card zone rather than having to set it. So Kauwloon is of course very good for that. That's why you need to maximize it, because if you have Chuche on the field, it of course is a very good Virtual World card to have on the field, not only because it has a really good pop effect, but also it's a good target for all of your Virtual World monsters in order for them to special summon themselves. We also run 3 copies of Qinglong. Qinglong is the searcher, but it is a bit of a roundabout way of having to have a searcher in a deck, because Qinglong is a continuous spell, but you almost never want to see it on the field. You're almost always going to be using its graveyard effect, that if this card is in the graveyard, you can banish it to add 1 Virtual World monster from your deck to your hand, and then you send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard. This of course is very good because it lets us just search any monster. Although the discarding is very annoying, it is kind of like a bit more balanced, so we don't want this deck to become too powerful that it keeps getting hit with a ban list. So Qinglong is definitely very good for that. But also what's very important to note is that Qinglong is also a spell, so if you have Chuche on the field and you're able to use your Virtual monsters in hand and target Chuche, you're able to dump Qinglong almost every time. And then if you have Qinglong on the grave, you're able to search, just extending your plays. So it's very important to have 3 copies of it in the deck. 3 copies of E-Tally. I honestly find this deck to be quite consistent. Yeah, I do get some like really bad bricky hands sometimes, but I find them to be few and far between, and most of that is because we have very good consistency with staples like Emergency Teleport, which says that you can just special summon 1 level 3 or lower psychic monster from your hand or deck, banish it during the end phase. This can be really good at getting your plays going, because if you didn't open a card like Nyannyan or Lulu but really want them on the field, you can just E-Tally to get them out as soon as possible. So it's really good for starters, but not only that, it can also be really good for extenders as well. So 3 copies of E-Tally I find to be very good for this build. This of course is a combo deck, so 1 copy of Call by the Grave is essential. We do not want to be interrupted at all, so Call by, run it at 1. I like to run 1 copy of Triple Tactics Talent. I think Talent is very good. Talent is better for this deck than Thrust is. Thrust is a very good card, but we just don't really have many cards that we can search off of it, unless if we're going for staples, which can be a bit pointless. So Triple Tactics Talent is definitely very good. If our plays get interrupted, Talent can be a good bounce back if you want to either use 1 of the effects of draw 2 cards, take control of 1 monster your opponent controls at the end phase, or look at your opponent's hand and choose 1 card from it to shuffle into the deck. Talent is just very good. I only run it at 1 because I think this deck space is very tight, but if you want to change around the ratios and maybe up this to like 2 or 3, that's absolutely fine. You can 100% go ahead with that. I run 3 copies of Pot of Desires. Pot of Desires is very good. Of course, we run so many like 2-ofs and 3-ofs in this deck that if we're activating a Pot of Desires and banishing the top 10, most of the time we don't get too badly damaged because we run so many copies of each card. So Pot of Desires is still very beneficial to us for that, but also the fact that all of the Virtual World cards are able to use each other to get into the graveyard or on the field or in the hand as quickly as possible, that we're able to do a lot of plays and get those cards in rotation before we even need to activate Pot of Desires to extend our plays even further. So I find 3 copies of Pot of Desires is definitely very good, and considering that Pot of Prosperity is limited to 1, Pot of Desires of course is a lot of a better option for us. Moving on to the traps now, 2 copies of Chuche. Chuche of course is very good, and it's very important to get on the field as quickly as possible. That's why we always use it with the Kauwloon, because Chuche has the effect that you can target 1 face-up card in the field, shuffle 2 of your banished Virtual World cards with different names from each other into the deck, and then you can destroy that card. This of course is a very good pop because this is a trap card you can use during your opponent's turn or your own if you have a face up. And also with the amount of Virtual World cards that banish themselves it's very easy to get Chuche alive as quickly as possible because of course you have Qinglong, which banishes itself for the search. You have Nyannyan and Toutou, which banish themselves when they leave the field if they were brought back as tuners. And also the big guy himself, Shenshen, he banishes every card that leaves the field while he's face up on the field. And also Shenshen is in the graveyard. You're able to banish 2 monsters with different types and attributes in order to bring them back, which of course is just really good. Not only because it brings Shenshen back, but also it makes Chuche alive pretty much all the time. So 2 copies of Chuche is very important for that, but I also stress that Chuche is very good to run multiple copies of because it has another effect in the graveyard that you can banish Chuche from the graveyard, target 1 virtual monster on the field, and you can either increase or decrease its level/rank by 3 until the end of this turn, which can be very good for level manipulation to go for bigger and better monsters depending on the situation. I think running it at 2 is fine. I don't recommend running it at 3 just because when I used to run it at 3, I used to open it all the time and it can just get very annoying to always see it in your hand. So you want it always either in the deck or in the graveyard, or more importantly bring it on the field as quickly as possible, and I think 2 is the optimal ratio in order to do that. 1 copy of Xuanwu. Xuanwu is pretty good, it's just not as strong as Chuche when it comes to the virtual world gate cards. So Xuanwu only needs to be ran at 1 copy. You almost never want to have it on the field for its battle phase effects. I'm not even going to bother reading it, it's not that good at all. What Xuanwu is very good for is that when it's in the graveyard, you can actually monster reborn with its effect, because during the main phase you can banish this card from the graveyard, target 1 virtual monster that is either in your graveyard, and you can special summon but negate its effects, and then you send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, which of course is very good at extending our plays in order to go for bigger monsters. So Xuanwu can be very good, definitely recommend running it at 1 copy. And then finally, rounding us off in the main deck, 3 copies of Imperm. You guys already know what this does. One of the best hand traps that there ever was. 3 copies, definitely running it in the deck. Going on to the extract now, of course, I mentioned him earlier, Shenshen. He's a very powerful boss monster. He's definitely the best extra deck virtual world monster. In my opinion, he's the only virtual world extra deck monster that's even worth running in the extra deck. He's a Synchro 9, and you can easily bring him out because of your virtual world monster able to spam the field very quickly and easily. But Shenshen's also very good and can be a bit of a floodgate to your opponent depending on what they're playing, because when Shenshen's face up on the field, any card sent from the field to the graveyard is banished instead, which can be very crippling depending on what your opponent is playing, but also can be beneficial to us because it means that we can keep feeding our Chuche to make it live pretty much all the time. But not only that, as I mentioned earlier, Shenshen has a revival effect from the graveyard that during the main phase, except for the turn that it was sent to the graveyard, you can banish 2 other monsters from the graveyard with different original types and attributes from each other and then special summon this card. I highly recommend running it at 1 copy, and because of that graveyard effect where it's able to revive itself, there's really no need to run any more than 1 copy. 1 copy is more than enough. One of my favorite synchro monsters, Geomathmech Final Sigma. He is a generic synchro 12, which we always love on this channel. What makes him so great is that he's unaffected by card effects except for Mathmech cards while he's in the extra monster zone, which of course is really powerful because he just makes him a bit of a towers that can be really difficult for your opponent to out while he's in the extra monster zone. And considering we don't run any links in this deck, we don't really care about using our extra monster zone, so we always try to reserve that space for Sigma. And Sigma is also very good because with 3000 attack, not only is he very strong, but also any damage inflicted to your opponent by battle with this card is doubled. So if Sigma is battling into like a very small weak monster, Sigma can get double damage to your opponent, which can be very good at closing out games. So I definitely recommend running Sigma at 1 copy, and I think it's very important because you want a generic Synchro 12 that you're able to go into in this deck, because it's always going to be to target with your Crimson Dragon. Crimson Dragon, of course, is another generic Synchro 12, but what makes him very good is that he has the effect that you can target 1 level 7 or higher Synchro monster on the field, which most of the time it's going to be your Sigma. Then you return this card to the extra deck, and if you do, you special summon 1 Dragon Synchro monster from your extra deck with the same level as a targeted monster, and this is treated as a synchro summon. So what I always do is I always used to try and set up a board where on the first turn I get Sigma on the field and I get Crimson Dragon on the field, and I used to pass turn to my opponent, and then during the draw phase I used to activate Crimson Dragon, target the Sigma, shuffle Crimson Dragon back in, and then I bring out King Calamity, and then King Calamity just basically shuts down your opponent for the entire turn, which of course was a really good floodgate. But considering that King Calamity is banned now, I have 2 other options that we can use our Crimson Dragon target on. One, of course, being the obvious Cosmic Blazar Dragon, who of course is really good. Could banish this card until the end phase and activate one of these effects. Either 1, when your opponent activates a card or effect, negate the activation if you destroy a card. 2, when your opponent opponent would summon a monster, you can negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. Or when your opponent monster declares an attack, negate the attack and then end the battle phase, which is just absolutely crazy. Cosmic Blazar Dragon is just so very powerful for that. So he of course is a really powerful guy you can bring out off Crimson Dragon, because there's no other easy way to cheat him out of the deck. But also another very good level 12 Synchro Dragon monster I like to run is Red Supernova Dragon. I really like Red Supernova Dragon, but he can be very powerful because not only is he a really big beater with 4000 attack, he can also gain an extra 500 attack for each tuner in your graveyard. And you actually do have like a fair few tuners in the deck, so Red Supernova Dragon can get up to a ridiculous amount of attack, which is very good. But he's also very good for his other effects, that once per turn, when your opponent's monster effect is activated, or when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can quick effect, banish this card, and also banish all cards your opponent controls, which is of course is just absolutely insane. And then once per turn during your next end phase, after this card is banished by its own effect, you can special summon this banished card. So it's just a really good recyclable card. Absolute board wipe, can just be very good. So one copy of each of these cards I find to be really good. I really like the Crimson Dragon package, and I recommend that you guys definitely try it out as well. And Crimson Dragon of course is going to be reprinted in the tins, so be more accessible now than ever before. Another small like synchro package I run of course is Ultimaya Tzolkin, and then the Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Ultimaya Tzolkin you're able to special summon by having 2 level 6s on the field. That is the only way we can go into him, because there's no other possible way Virtual World can bring him out. So you're essentially Synchro 12ing in order to go into him. But he also has the effect that once per turn, when a spell / trap card is set on your field, you can special summon 1 power tool synchro monster, 1 level 7 or 8 dragon synchro monster from your extra deck, which of course will be your Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. And also, while you control another synchro monster, monsters cannot target this card with attacks, and also your opponent can target it with card effects. This is fairly good for bringing out Crystal Wing, which I find to be really a powerful monster, and this was pretty much the Crimson Dragon before Crimson Dragon was a thing. Ultimaya Tzolkin was like an essential monster to be running in Virtual World, but now I kind of am hemming and hawing between like just cutting this package out altogether. If we weren't so badly hit off of the ban list, honestly I might even like consider just pulling it all together, but we still have like some wiggle room with this extra deck. But the reason why I'm like even more adamant now than ever before on like taking the Ultimaya Tzolkin package out is because I was one time dueling Sean with Virtual World versus Red Dragon Archfiend, and I was reading Crimson Dragon, and Crimson Dragon can actually target one of your opponent's synchro monsters on the field, not just your own that you need to be controlling. So what I was able to do was use Crimson Dragon, target one of Sean's Red Dragon Archfiend, and then bring out my own Crystal Wing, which I thought was just absolutely insane, that there is still a way for me to go into Crystal Wing with this deck without having to waste so much resources on Ultimaya Tzolkin, because like it is a very big commitment. Not only is it like your basic synchroing 12 where you could go for a better monster with Ultimaya Tzolkin, especially because he can easily be interrupted, but also you still need to set a card on the field in order to get this effect to bring out the Crystal Wing. So I'm still not 100% sure this is going to be seeing much play now that I have the Crimson Dragon, but who knows. I think it's still a nice little package to be running. If you guys want to change it out or leave suggestions for what you might change it out for, but I'm just going to keep it in here for the meantime. But maybe when some other good staples get reprinted, I might find myself using those rather than this little package right here. 2 important level 6 Trinko monsters I find to be really good to run in this deck, of course, is Coral Dragon and Stardust Charge Warrior. These are just really good because they actually have some draw effects that make you go deeper into the deck, but also the fact that Coral Dragon's a tuner and then Charge Warrior is just a regular synchro monster. It can be really good at extending your plays, so I definitely recommend running one of each. Going on to EXZs now, I like to run number 75 Bamboozling Gossip Shadow, a generic rank 3 monster, but it can also work as a monster negate, which of course can be very good if you want to go for a big combo setup where we just set up a bunch of negates to contribute to that. I also like to run Totem Bird at 1. Totem Bird can be a little bit trickier to get into because you need 2 level 3 wind monsters, but considering that all of your psychics in the deck are wind monsters as well, you don't have too much of a problem going into Totem Bird, who of course is a spell and trap negate, which of course can be very good and important, but you want to be saving that for the board breakers. And one thing I also like to run is one copy of Wind Up Zenmains. I think Zenmains is a lot of fun. He's definitely one of my favorite rank 3 monsters. And also I feel like the card is so old that not a lot of people would really be expecting it because he can be a little bit of a problem. He's a generic rank 3 monster that has the effect that if this face-up card in the field will be destroyed, you can detach one AA-ZEUS material from this card instead, which is very, very good for making him like stick the field. And if you're able to stick him for long enough, you can even go into Zeus later as well. But not only that, but also once per turn during the end phase, if the effect of Zenmains was used, you can target one card in the field and just destroy it. I find Zenmains to be very cool and very fun. I recommend playing him, but if you guys want to change around the extra deck, that's no problem at all. That's one thing I like about Virtual World. You can take it in so many different directions that it really doesn't matter. Not one extra deck is like gospel. You can be creative in any way you want. So those are some ways I like to be a bit creative with the deck, and running 3 of those are rank 3 monsters. Rank 6, number 39, Utopia Beyond. Generic rank 6 monster that if this card is AA-ZEUS summoned, the attack of all monsters your opponent control become 0. Secondary effect does not matter. You always use him for the effect to make all of your opponent's monsters attack become 0, because then it's a very, very easy way to OTK from there. And it'd be really funny, especially if you're pairing this with Stardust Charge Warrior. If all those monsters were special summoned, Charge can attack each one of your opponent's special summoned monsters. So there's a very, very cool synergy with the Stardust monsters and the Utopia monsters there that I really, really enjoy. I also like to run one copy of Blazar Lars. Lars, of course, can be a very, very good Omni Negate. It can be a bit annoying, but Lars is still just a very, very powerful card because, you know, who doesn't love a good Omni Negate? So definitely recommend running him at one copy in the build. And then finally, rounding off the extra deck, Zeus. Zeus is, of course, very, very easy to overlay into an AA-ZEUS monster if an AA-ZEUS monster attacked this turn. And with Zeus, you get a board wipe just by detaching 2 materials, which isn't even once per chain. So Divine Arsenal Zeus, I think, is a very, very good way to round off this extra deck. Going into the side deck now, 3 copies of Nibiru. I think Nibiru is going to be very, very good this format because I think a lot of the top decks are still going to be combo decks. Yes, Snake Eyes was hit, but Yubel is still summoning a lot of monsters per turn, so Nibiru can be very, very good at tackling that. But not only that, if you're getting out like a massive token on your opponent's side of the field, you have Chuche that's able to easily out it, so we don't really run into a problem where we summon a token that's too big. We can easily out them, so 3 copies of Nib I find to be very, very good. I like to run 3 copies of Lava Golem. I always like to have some form of kaiju in a side deck no matter what. And I just think Lava Golem is just very, very good because it tributes 2 monsters your opponent controls in order to get them onto their side of the field. And again, we're able to easily out them with Chuche as well. So even if we Lava Golem our opponent and then during their standby phase they take the damage, we're able to chain Chuche and just out him after your opponent takes the damage as well. So that can be a very, very good trick that you're able to play. So 3 copies of Lava Golem, of course, very, very good for the build. For the back row decks and everything, I like to run some spell and trap card removal because we don't have a lot of it in the main deck. So 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone and 1 copy of Harpies. You just never know where you're going to be going against. Of course, Runic is definitely going to be a big deck this coming format, so it's definitely worthwhile to run those cards. Also like 3 copies of Dark Ruler no More. Dark Ruler no More, of course, is very, very good against combo decks if we're forced to go second. Just negate the effects of all face-up monster your opponent controls until the end of this turn. Spell speed 4, so it's very, very hard for our opponent to interact with it as well. But also my favorite combo if we're forced to go second and siding in Dark Ruler no More, I also like the siding in 3 copies of Evenly Matched because we're able to Dark Ruler our opponent that they can't activate monster effects and then they're stuck with a bunch of monsters that do nothing, and we're able to go battle phase Evenly Matched. There's not a whole lot they can do to pretty much stop that. So I find the 3 copies of Dark Ruler no More and 3 copies of Evenly Matched are very, very good at rounding off this side deck. So that about does it for the deck. Please let me know what you guys think. I'm really happy with the way this deck turned out, and I think it can perform pretty well in the coming format. What do you guys think of the ban list? Was your deck hurt as much as Virtual World was, or did you guys go off unscathed? Please let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel because there's plenty more content like this on this channel and plenty more content on the way, and we'll see you next time.